Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Founders Fire podcast. I'm super excited to bring on a longtime friend and genius and an all-around great guy, Dr. Mike Venezia, because a couple of things. One is he kept me sane at very important times in my life as entrepreneurs cross paths in the midst of chaos. We help each other, and Mike, you were definitely that for me, but also a father, a husband, obviously an incredible doctor and a healer, someone who is concerned about not high performance just for the numbers, but getting people kind of to their maximum, to their potential, whatever they are, whether they're an athlete or they're not. Mike will go into his background a little bit here in a second, but I just wanted to start off by saying to all you guys listening, the reason that we're here is simply because there is no path. There is no straight path. There is no start at A and go to B. There is get excited, have an entrepreneurial seizure, jump out into the water with no flotation device at all, and start building your boat. And that is not unusual. In fact, that's typical. So we just want to provide some inspiration and hopefully some helpful tips. So without further ado, Dr. Mike, welcome to Founders Fire.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's an awesome introduction, and I think you kind of hit it right on the head. No one prepares you for entrepreneurship. I'm the shining example of that. I started a practice right out of school, thought I knew everything, and failed miserably. And it took a while, and I think that the biggest thing and it's something that always comes back around is listening to people that maybe know a little bit more than you or have been there and taking their, whether it's just sage wisdom or their advice or whatever it is, and applying it, right? Because maybe it's not applicable right now, but down the road, amazing the things that you'll look back on going, yep, that's probably should listen to that earlier.
For sure. Hey, well, maybe we start back a little bit then. Maybe
Sure.
tell us a little bit about your time with some of the professional sports teams that you've worked with.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's a pretty high performance environment in every category.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe give us some insights into that world.
Sure. So, like I said, I started out, opened up a practice, hung my shingle, and I didn't know anything, to be honest. I didn't know what I wanted to be, what kind of a chiropractor I wanted to be, whether it was a family doc or a sports doc. And it's not to say that school didn't train you for it as much as you had to do stuff after school, like a residency. And I just wasn't ready for that yet. So after about 2 years, I humbled myself and sold my practice. I had built up enough of a clientele that I could at least break even. And I kind of threw my mercy onto a really great sports doc who kind of took me in and showed me what it's like to work with professional athletes. And so we worked on a lot of professional athletes down in Southern California. And it was an amazing eye-opening experience to know what I didn't know. But the gentleman that taught me, his name is Vinny Gualiano, was probably one of the nicest people, who was very patient and introduced me to everybody and said, he's my guy, which was great. So I worked in that office for quite some time and really cut my teeth and, didn't make a lot of money, but I learned a lot. And that was huge for me. And basically then flash forward, as I started to meet people, especially in Southern California, it's kind of all who you know, right? I had met a couple of professional athletes that went back, and these were on the Dodgers at the time. So the head of the Dodgers athletic training department reached out and said, hey, would you consider working as the in-house chiropractor or the on-staff chiropractor? And so, you don't say no necessarily.
Right.
No. So, and it was great. It was an amazing, again, humbling experience, because it was the first time that I saw somebody that wasn't an MD in charge. The athletic trainer is the main person. So everything goes through your ATC, and everybody respects the ATC, which it was really an eye-opening experience, that somebody who wasn't just, let's say, an MD, and nothing against MDs at all, but that it had to go in a different direction. And so while I was there, again, you're working on, 50, 70, $80 million arms or legs.
Right.
And it's a very humbling experience, because you can't have a bad day. You
Yeah.
can't show up late. If they say, "Hey, can you stay later?" There's no. You don't get to the no. Sorry, I have to go home. Um, I'm lucky I have an amazing wife that really supported me through all of this and said, "Do what you have to do.
Mm.
Either get this out of your system, or this is what you're going to do, and we will figure it out."
Yeah.
And so while I did all of that, again, your name kind of gets passed around, and that's really the nicest part is that you just start to meet people.
Hmm.
And so I met again the head ATC for the Lakers, and they were going through a transition at that time too. One of their older guys had finally stepped down, so the Showtime Lakers ATC, he was done. Right? He paid his dues. He's ready to retire. So they brought in a whole new staff, and again, I was lucky enough to go and be on that staff for a little bit, and then with the LA Kings as well. So
Hmm.
I kind of hit some
Yeah.
some of the big sports.
Oh, it's
And
awesome,
then
man.
yeah, it's just again, it was really cool, and again, there's lots of crazy stories that you hear, and what's really nice is that you find out that whether the guy's making $100 million a year or he's making the league minimum. Um, they're all the same guys. They're all just trying to hack away, trying to do their job.
Mhm.
And if you can give them a little bit of relief, or even just make them smile, because a lot of times, they trust you,
Mhm.
and they need to say something, whether it's privately or they
Mhm.
just they need to get it out.
Mhm.
You become more than just to say the guy that's going to either crack your neck, so to speak, or do soft tissue work or whatever it is you're going to
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
and you become their friend.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what struck me the most was that I'd have these guys that they're in their 20s, right? They don't you don't know anywhere, right? They've got loads of money. They don't know what to do, and maybe I had one guy who came in and he was really dizzy and he was scared because it was a contract year,
Hmm.
and you don't want to stand in on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball if you can't stand up straight, right? Just probably not the best idea. He was
No.
scared. He was scared to go and tell the head ATC. Not that he wasn't a great guy, but it goes down on your chart. And
Yeah.
so, he basically felt enough. Or he trusted me enough to say, "What do I do?"
Yeah.
And we worked out a plan that we could talk to the ATC kind of off the record and see what he thought he could do, because everybody was there to help out, which I thought was amazing.
Mhm.
And it worked out well for him, which was great. Never necessarily it went on his record, but it didn't affect
Mhm.
his
Mhm.
next contract. But
Mhm. Mhm.
it's amazing that you start to realize that these guys, whether they're celebrities or they're pro athletes, they're regular people. They have
Mhm.
regular, well, not regular jobs, but they have feelings, and they're
Yeah.
scared too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really. I think I learned that I became more than just, let's say, a chiro, or more than just a doc, and it's more that you're their friend, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you have that trust with them.
Well, I think it goes
And
without saying that kind of in all service businesses, you have that there's the thing that you do, but then there's the relationship that you create that allows you to do that thing, and you're talking about kind of like having a little humble pie right out of the gate and like, okay, and now let's kind of rejigger this and see what we want to do. Meet some
yep,
of the right people. Those people know people. Again, what starts to become as big an asset as the technical knowledge or the medical knowledge, the anatomy and everything that that goes into that side of it becomes the relational skill. How do you
yeah,
listen to somebody, right? How do you put
mhm,
somebody at ease? And clearly when you have, I mean, that's probably about as high a pressure environment as you could get. Is I have to go play this game tonight, and many hundreds of millions, if not more, are on the line.
yeah,
And my elbow's hurting, doc. What do we
yeah.
do?
What do I
Or
do?
whatever,
Yeah,
or whatever.
it's absolutely crazy, and that's the stuff that again, hopefully you pay your dues and you learn before you go on to like the really big stuff. And it's humbling because you want to come out and you want to make lots of money and you want to pay your student loans and you want to get the house and all.
Mhm. Mhm.
They sell you the dream, and it's not that it's not a lie, as much as you need to figure out where you fall into that, and
Mhm.
it's okay to start slow.
Mhm.
It's okay to learn your craft and then become compassionate in whatever you do. I mean, because it's followed me outside of practice as well, is to
Mhm.
just take a step back and just be compassionate and to be humble and learn, because chances are somebody might know it's the smidgen more than you, or they have a different experience.
Yep.
It's okay to listen. They don't have to agree, but it's
Yeah.
okay to listen.
Yeah.
It's probably going to come back full circle, let's say
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's funny. in my background in martial arts and in music, which are not, I don't think, strict athletic endeavors. I mean, I know martial arts, there's the UFC and fighting sports and whatnot. Of course, we've had boxing and pugilism forever, but and wrestling. But still you look at those and you say, okay, what's it like to go from a novice, to an intermediate to an advanced? And one of the things that I found is that when you find the people, like you said, who have really become students, that they're the last people to tell you all their degrees or their rank or their this or their that. They're the last people to look down at you. But if you come down about 5 or 10% from those people, that's the shark zone. These people
Yep.
are they're very good, but they're
Hmm.
also equally insecure about their being good. In other words, they tend to be good because of who they've passed.
Yes.
And I feel like, comparison can be pretty detrimental. Healthy competition is fun. Let's get out there
Sure.
and see who's where and what, and that's good.
Hmm.
But when it becomes that kind of root level comparison, and of course, if you're there as the more seasoned person at the moment with the 20-year-old who's thrown into that environment and all the different factors. I mean, what an amazing set of services, quote unquote, that you're providing. Maybe a little bit of mentorship, a little bit of guidance. Frankly, just another man who's not trying to take their job or get some inside scoop or all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs out there, we can get overly focused on the technical delivery. It could be software, it could be a car, it could be a service of some kind, a dry cleaners, whatever kind of business that a person happens to be in. And it is very easy to nosedive into the technical because we think that's what makes us valuable. How did you strike such a good balance? I mean, I've only ever known you, more recently, let's say last 6 or 7 years.
Hmm.
And I'm not assuming you had the perfect balance on day one, but how did you evolve that between, this technical information that I know is
Hmm.
only important if this person trusts me or is
Yeah.
relaxed or yeah, tell us about
Yeah.
that a little bit.
I think again, a lot of it was you kind of cut your teeth. So in the beginning, I came out and I didn't know anything, so I just did what I thought I knew how to do, and a lot of it was it's hate to say it, a lot of it's performance based, right? So performance, like it's an act, right? Like so, I would smile and I just make them happy that they wanted to come and see me, and so it was an inviting place, and it wasn't insincere by any means, but you kind of get your shtick, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Yeah.
and it starts to develop, but you can see the people that are incredibly insincere about it. It's always, let's say, a selling technique, or they're always trying to sell you something, and it's not just being honest, right? Um, and when I first came out, I think I made a lot of mistakes in that regard, where I was trying to just sell somebody something instead of just saying, you know what, I can't help you, but you know what, that guy down the road, amazing. That person's really going to help you out. In fact, let me make a phone call, and I will make sure that you get in front of the line because they're my friend, or I know them and they're happy to do a favor for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's that humbleness that's probably what got me to the point where people would come and seek me out, and it
Mhm.
wasn't because I was necessarily I knew more than the guy down the street, but it was because I was honest.
Mhm.
I couldn't fix it, or I didn't know what it was. I'm going to call somebody, and then you balance that out with everything else that you do.
Mhm.
um, you
Yeah.
know I worked like an animal when I first got out of school. I worked 4 jobs. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I want to stop you right there and just say to
Yeah.
everybody, the reason that I think people have imposter syndrome is because they didn't do what you just said. It's like, look, there just needs to be a time. I don't know if it's from age 20 to 25 or 24 to 30, but there's got to be some decent little chunk of time in there where you do have to become an animal. You have to eat
Yes.
top ramen noodles. You have to
Yep.
work 80-hour weeks, sleeping on a futon, right? Like
It it builds character.
there's no substitute for that. I'm not saying it needs to be long and miserable, but you do have to come to enough dead ends that you really start asking the better questions instead of like, how can I succeed? You start asking a question that's maybe more like, what's getting in the way of me succeeding? I came into this opportunity and it didn't work out. I got another great opportunity and it didn't work out. How can I succeed? Maybe it's like, no, 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 don't even ask that question. What am I doing that's causing this block? Because I'm getting on the right stage, but nobody's showing up at the auditorium. So like, what,
Yeah.
look in the mirror moment. That's basically what it is.
Yeah. I think to your point, it's super important. And like I said, I worked 80, 90, 100 hours, whatever I had to do to pay the bills, to keep my, keep my doors open and keep my lights on. I mean, I was a DJ and I made more money DJing than I did as a chiro. Like
Right,
it was ridiculous. Like my best friend and I built this really amazing DJ company in Southern California. And I would shake my head going, I make more money doing this than I do in my chosen profession.
right.
And people would, they would look at me, they'd be like, wait, you're a DJ on the weekends? I'm like, you got to pay the bill somehow. Like, what do you want me to do?
Hey,
But,
and you're already going to get invited to the party. So it kind of works
right?
hand in hand.
Yeah, again, it's humbling, but that's part of,
Yeah.
I can look back at it now going, it's not that I paid my dues, but yeah, I mean, if I didn't have to go through all that and, I slept in the back of my office for a little bit and didn't have any money for an apartment.
Yeah.
You do what you have to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I look back at that going, I did that. And then, I was blessed enough to get an amazing wife that like really supported me and said, I think you're really good at what you do. You need a little bit of help, so to speak. And she was great with just going, I'll help you out. Right.
Yeah.
And really supported me through it, which
awesome.
I couldn't ask for more.
I don't think that the term self-made, nobody thinks that's true. Nobody except for someone who's not tried yet. I love the Teddy Roosevelt "Man in the Arena," quote from which I didn't realize is I think it's a much longer speech, and this is about like 5 paragraphs out of this speech. I mean, to have made a speech so good that just one little chunk becomes immemorial or memorialized rather. Just absolutely amazing. But I think when people don't get in there and they don't risk it and they stay back in the stands and they fold their arms and they observe, they think, wow, it'd be so great to be a self-made man or whatever, the boss babe who pulled herself up by her own bootstraps and did it all herself. And I think that that's one of those illusions that needs to become disillusioned. We need to lose our illusion that you can do it all yourself. And I think, frankly, when you think about it, would you even want to? Would you just want to be the solo rocket ship out there in the middle of nowhere?
It's no fun.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. Well, it sounds like it was pretty amazing. The Lakers, the Kings, the Dodgers, all of that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about reinvention. When those seasons start to come to a conclusion or the motivation changes, maybe tell us a little bit about how you maybe navigated some of those situations or thoughts you have on that.
Sure. So, and this was probably the hardest part is that you basically get burned out. And it's whether it's from your private practice or from, again, I was doing, stuff with a bunch of different teams and then also had a private practice on the side. You wake up going, I'm so tired. And you never wanted to show at your practice. And there was a really telling moment. I had a patient come in and she'd been a patient for a while and had a bunch of different injuries and whatever have you. And she's like, are you okay? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're just not the same happy, like you don't think you're enjoying this anymore. She's like, you used to come in all bubbly and you were gonna, cure the world. And now you're like, eh. And that's when it kind of like dawned, I had my aha moment where I'm like, it's not like I have to bail right away, but I needed to find happiness or I needed to find joy or even something to take on something new. Right. And yeah, like I said, I checked off, I made sure I had a bunch of check boxes, so to speak, that I wanted to be able to do. And so I wanted to be able to work on pro athletes. I wanted to have a successful private practice. And again, even working with other docs, like if I could go and bring them more money and so that their bottom line up and so I was of value, that made me happy. So I kind of checked all my boxes that I needed to and saying, all right, I did what I wanted, but what do I do now? And it was like I was just going to quit because, again, being a chiropractor, you're set up to be a chiropractor. It's not like you're going to go into like the corporate world and take it by storm. You can, but it's just different. So it was funny enough. Again, I being so close with all of my patients, they were always looking out for me, which I thought was amazing.
Mm.
And they would always bring different ideas to me, or they would say, "Hey, you know, what are you doing? You want to do something else?" And again, just being lucky enough to have patients that uh, were basically caring about me as much as I care about them.
Mhm.
I thought it's amazing because you build those relationships and they become like family.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say I was lucky enough, although I was. I think
Mhm.
it took me a while to figure it out, but I was lucky enough to
Yeah.
have an opportunity to leave private practice and go into corporate America and see what that was like. Because I figured, well, I haven't done that yet.
Mhm.
Must be an interesting world, and it's still in the, I got an opportunity to do something in the, uh, let's say the rehab world, so it's still in my
Yeah.
lane,
Yeah.
and that's, I, looking back at it now, it was the best thing I ever did, just because I wouldn't be where I am now.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's not a mistake. I mean, again, there was lots of suffering and crying and pain, but it made me such a better person, and I made so many great friends that are lifelong friends that you know what, like it taught me so much
Yeah.
about how resilient like I was, especially at later on. I'm in my 30s going uh-oh, or my 40s going, did I just make a huge mistake? I'm in trouble, right? um,
Uh,
it, Amazing though, and again, that's where we met.
yeah,
It's
that's
getting
right.
out and trying something and being. Um, it's okay to be nervous.
Yeah.
It's okay to be uncomfortable. And that's kind of what got me to that point where, again, it took a while. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had
Yeah.
a lot of therapy, but
Yeah.
um, it. Yep, looking back at it now, I'm a much stronger and confident person because of it. And I also learned not what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
that's right. I hear that people say that when bad things happen,
mhm,
we can control whether they become trauma or not by do we
mhm,
put those bad things and the lessons to use?
yep,
If it becomes the story of here's this terrible thing that happened to me, then it's probably just going to live as a trauma, as a lot of unresolved, negativity. But if we
mhm,
say, look, there's a good portion of that, maybe even all of that, that didn't have anything to do with me. That wasn't about me. That was about
yeah,
the situation I was in. And now let me do an inventory. What can I take from that? What can I learn from that? How can I alchemize that? How can I, try to transform that? And like you said, what can I learn not to do? It's not that we have to look at those situations with, I don't say anger or unforgiveness. You can look at them as like that person was making the choices on the menu available to them. How can I be sure the menu available to me as a leader includes better choices than those options that they were selecting,
mhm,
and then also just being able to see up close and personal the human cost of decisions. I mean, a lot of the themes that we talk about on
yeah,
Founders Fire are we're in business not just to make money but to make an impact, and to say, okay, how do both of those things work together? I mean, we're not in the for-profit, I'm sorry, the not-for-profit space, so it's not a
right,
charity. So we got to
mhm,
pay the bills, money's got to come in, we got to buy and
mhm,
sell. But if all we do is go, what is the most ruthlessly efficient way to buy it for $1 and sell it for two, then we know what's going to happen. The burnout, the human cost is going to be catastrophic. And also, it actually isn't good for profit, maybe even in the midterm or the long term, and maybe even in the short term, right? We just know it's a self-defeating kind of worldview. And I
yep,
feel like that's, when you follow your passion and when you follow the good relationships that you have, and you keep asking the question, like you said, how can I provide value in the situation? What can I do to create value? It's not a straight line. It's not the panacea, but it is the a process that if we stay connected to it, does tend to pop you out on the other side of the rapids a little
yeah,
wiser, and a little bit
mhm,
maybe a little bit more sensitive and understanding of what goes into those sorts of things. So, well, let's talk about kind of like where you're at now in terms of
sure,
you've done some reinvention and tried some
mhm,
of those things. And because I think a lot of people are in this phase of there's startup phase, there's kind of growth and development phase, and then there's well, I could do a bunch of stuff. And I
sure,
and I want to say this not to embarrass you, but but to be truthful. For a smart guy like you just have a lot of things you could do. You could do software, you could do strategic work, you could do all the medical side, you could do music. It's like, how have you found it's helpful to navigate, frankly, when you have kind of more horsepower and you
Yep.
could be really good at a handful of things, a number of things. The idea of like, well, but I got to choose, or I've got to,
Yeah.
how have you processed that challenge?
It's actually the funniest story. So after, I was looking for basically after my job ended, my first corporate job ended. You're kind of forced to go, well, what do I want to do now? Because I can go, for me, I can go back into private practice, but I have to build a new practice because I had already moved up to Washington. So it wasn't like I go back to Southern California and just take all my patients back. Yeah, I wore a lot of hats. So I did software development, did all this stuff that it proved that I could do it my own head, sure. But I think the biggest thing for me was to look for something that was going to get me excited and get me up in the morning, and not something that was just a job to have a job. Uh, and and I tried that. Or I take it back. I took a job when I first came out, and it was funny. I didn't even know what the job was. Like, I couldn't describe it. I didn't know what it was. They just hired me, and I was like, well, all right, sure. Like, what? Why not? It's a job. They're paying me what I want, and it's in the Portland area, so I'm close. I can work from home most of the time. Score. Um, but I didn't know what my job was. Like, actually, I went out with our neighbors, and they were like, "Well, what is your job?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And they looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "I don't." Um, it turned out to be an amazing job. I ended up recruiting other chiropractors into this insurance program, and it was again a place where maybe the idea wasn't necessarily what's going to get me up in the morning, but the people that I met
Mm,
and the relationships that I forged and what I learned is what really got me up in the morning.
mm,
And then the projects that we looked at and going, well, we're higher up now, so I can look at it and go, this is a great idea, but how do we expand it? And having a boss who would listen to me and go, that's a good idea.
mm,
Develop it, figure it out, and let's now present it, right? And I don't know if that happens all the time. I think I was blessed that I had somebody that would listen
mm.
and was willing to go, that's a good idea. What do we need to do to bring it in? Let's bring this to fruition. It Yeah, again, I was really lucky that I had that opportunity, and again, became one of my best friends. After we all left to move on to our next adventures, but each adventure kind of grew, and that's how I kind of learned about what got me excited or what got me up in the morning to go, what do I do? And what I learned is that I love creating. So I
Mm,
love creating something from nothing. So if it doesn't exist and somebody comes in going, we need you to create a department, ready, set, go. Awesome, right?
mm,
Give me
mm,
some tools or some dollars, whatever I might need,
mhm,
and let's see what I can come up with. And for me, it's a challenge and it's fun.
mm,
And it's not to say that I get bored from it as much as when that project is done, then maybe I move on to something else. I think I'm really lucky where I am now because
mhm.
I don't think it'll ever end. It's an evolving project, and it just
Right.
keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is great for me. And where I am now, they allow me the ability to spread out and be a bit more creative and do things that maybe aren't traditional, but let's try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, we tried.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
'Cause you have to try, right? You might not know you like something until you try it. It's never a failure, right? It's just an experience to go, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
like that. I like the phrase, when we win or we learn, but it doesn't have to be a fail unless you frame it that way. And I know it sounds, maybe cliche and all that, but the reality is that, this Marcus Aurelius quote here over my shoulder, the
I'm looking at it.
happiness
Yeah,
of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, is true. I mean, and it is true.
absolutely.
When someone says this is the worst day ever, I say, what happened? They're like, oh, my Mercedes got all scraped up and the transmission is not going right. My kids at private school, got yelled at by the gym teacher. And you're thinking, there's somebody in like Somalia who is like
Right.
every one of your worst problems would be their
Mhm.
absolute win the
Best
lottery
day.
moment. Yeah, it's the best day of their
Yeah.
life to have those problems. So the
Yeah.
mental approach, obviously is critical for all of us. So, well, hey, as we
Mhm.
kind of land the plane here,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. When you look at, your kind of trajectory, where you've been, kind of what's been in your heart, how you've been able to reinvent. Is there something that you could maybe leave us with? No pressure, but something that you could leave us with, or you say, that's one I wish I knew earlier. That's an idea or a
Mhm.
technique or an approach that something we're all like, yep, we learned it when we learned it, and it was good, and life goes on. That's totally true, right? But there are
Sure.
some things. There are some things.
Oh,
If I knew that
absolutely.
earlier, that could have really helped out. Anything stand out
Mhm.
in your kind of entrepreneurial journey that you'd put a log on that fire?
I think there's a couple of things. I think that the most important thing that I've learned through all of this is it doesn't matter who you meet. They're important in your life, or they're in your life for a reason at whatever time. Maybe it's not even the most opportune time, but they're there, and they're there for a reason. Um, Take advantage of whoever's in your life at that time, their knowledge, their wisdom, maybe just an experience. They're there for a reason. It might not be what you're going to use right away, but down the road, you might have that aha moment, or it might give you pause to think. And it's happened a lot of times in my life where, again, rather than, let's say, go off the handles and scream and yell, or to make a poor decision that was just a rash decision, to pull back and think for a second. I think it's helped me out a lot. And all of these people have been mentors in some way, shape, or form in my life. They could be younger than me. Maybe they have a different experience. To be older. It doesn't matter about age or anything like that. It's just they're there for a reason to teach you. And it's okay to learn, right? It's okay to take. It's not even advice. Just learn. You know, it doesn't happen every day, but when it does, you grab onto it.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, Dr. Mike, as always, so great to spend a little time with you, and I'm so happy to introduce you to the folks that don't know you. For me, I think there's a couple of things that always uh, make someone stand out, and one is their kindness and their wholeheartedness, and the other is their level of mastery and expertise. And in you, we've got both of those, and I think everybody listening can tell. So thank you for spending some time with us, and appreciate you making a difference in the world where you are and giving us a good example for that.
No, thank you for having me, and this is my pleasure. I enjoyed this a lot, so thank you.
Awesome.